again.
Good to see
Let's
you.
get into it.
All
President
right.
Trump set on making Greenland part of the United States, saying that owning the island is critical for protecting the West against Russia and China. Trump writing on Truth Social saying that, quote, NATO should be leading the way for us to get it. The alliance is far more effective with Greenland in the hands of the United States. But Denmark has owned the territory for hundreds of years and isn't budging after a meeting with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio at the White House. The president says all options on the table.
You were saying that you would potentially acquire Greenland by force. That would be a NATO country. The United. Are you saying that? Would you do that?
No, you're saying that. I didn't say it. No, you're telling me that that's what I'm going to do. You don't know what I'm going to do. Greenland's very important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is, there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland.
All right, I want to get into this. Brian, you said something last hour where you said that this is Trump. He doesn't actually put things out on Truth Social that maybe he thinks he can do. We talked about how he wants to do a Truth Social, capping credit cards at 10% and naming, was it John or Jim? John Harbaugh,
that's right. Yeah.
To the Giants, and he doesn't really influence those, but he puts some things out there. Is this the same to you or different?
No, different.
Why?
I think he's serious. Greenland matters. It matters to China and Russia, and therefore matters to us. Look, this is not, this is where you kind of have to put polite conversation aside, okay? If Greenland is that strategic, and I think it is, then you kind of have to say to Denmark, you can't do the job. You can't, Denmark is just not capable of defending Greenland, developing Greenland, and I don't think governing the parts of that island that have to be governed to keep China and Russia at bay. They can't do it.
But is that our job to decide who can or cannot do it?
I'll tell you what is our job. Our job is to defend American interests and national security. This is Western Hemisphere stuff, okay? That doesn't mean we take it over. I'm not saying we take it over. But I do think, see, people are getting all upset at Trump because he's playing hardball with Denmark, okay? I'm happy he's playing hardball with Denmark. I want him to do that. I don't think at the end of the day we got to take it over militarily, but you got to send a message. We're not doing the same thing we've always been doing because China and Russia aren't doing the same thing they've always been doing, and we can't sit back. This is Monroe Doctrine stuff. We've always thought about that going south, but it's true going north as well.
Okay, Michael Lee, love having you here. Desperate for your thoughts.
Yeah, so something is rotten in Denmark, literally. Because it makes no sense for them not to want to do a deal with the United States. Okay, it's going to take over $100 billion of capital expenditures to be able to extract the oil, extract the minerals. Denmark doesn't have that type of money, and if they were going to do something, they would have already done it. Okay, and we're so used to looking at a map like this, when the reality, the Earth is a globe. And so all of Russia's strategic military assets are in that northern part of the globe next to Finland, right? All their ballistic missiles, all their submarines, okay, all their deadly warships, it all exists up there. And any sort of ballistic missile attack from Russia comes right over Greenland. And to be able to set up this Golden Dome or to intercept those missiles, you want to get it at the crest in the air, which you're much better positioned from Greenland than anywhere else on Earth, okay? Additionally, China, like, so the North Pole, where Santa is fine, but around him, it's breaking up. And so you're going to start to see massive Chinese tankers travel through there, delivering goods to Europe, which means there's a high probability that Chinese submarines are already navigating the waters out there. So the bigger so it's directly in NATO's interest for the U.S. to have a controlling interest there. It's directly in Greenland's interest because they're never going to be able to mine it, and you could get as many as 500 million barrels a year of oil out of there, so they're never going to profit from it. So their politicians are likely at somewhere on the take. That's my only logical conclusion. Because remember, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, one of the board members was Gerhard Schroeder, the former prime minister of Germany, was instrumental in setting that up before the Russians blew up their own pipeline. So, like, I don't. something's wrong here. Trump is right to push this issue. And for people that look at this objectively, the U.S. is doing a good thing for the West, for the United States, and for the world.
Okay, but Jackie, the critics would say, we have NATO. This is why we have NATO. If someone attacks Greenland, NATO's involved. The U.S. will be involved in that. That is the precedent. We don't need to go in there now preemptively. What do you say about that?
Well, we know the president doesn't really trust NATO, and a lot of people don't trust NATO, so I understand that. And I don't dispute anything that Brian or Mike have said with respect to the importance of Greenland and the issue in general. The only thing that I'm concerned about right now is biting off a little bit more than you can chew. There is so much going on President Trump's plate. You know, he started when he came into office with his tariff agenda. That's not even finished yet. We're still waiting for the Supreme Court. He's working on the economy here at home, domestically, in other aspects as well. We were talking about inflation earlier in the program. When you look at his foreign policy strategy, while I applaud everything that he's done so far, it's extremely, extremely ambitious. We don't know what's going to end up happening with Venezuela. Iran is a tinderbox right now. Not sure, necessarily what he's going to do if he chooses to do something in that situation. And so I look at all these things and say he's definitely focusing on the right issues, but I worry that the administration and the country in general will sort of be spread a little bit too thin as it's tackling so much.
And on that point, I think it's a great point because I like the idea of making a move on Greenland. I think for all the reasons that Michael just went through, we clearly need the territory. It is a vulnerability when it comes to China and Russia. But the other thing, too, is that I don't know that it needs to be so urgent. One thing that China does so well is its central planning. And they plan not for continuing resolution to continuing resolution or midterm to midterm or 4-year cycles. They plan for centuries at a time. And when I hear about these plans about Greenland, and what a strategic importance it is for us to have that territory to secure us from China and from Russia, I think that would be great right now, but it doesn't necessarily have to be right now. It could be in the next 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. So I try to be a little bit more flexible with the timeline. And frankly, we haven't heard a timeline from the president. He's talking about it with a sense of urgency, and we don't know that it is that urgent. And so I wouldn't totally to anybody who's worried about the urgency, I wouldn't dismiss the idea just because it seems like he wants to do it now.
I think the urgency to him is that he's got 3 years left. And
Absolutely.
He says to himself, if I don't do this now, it's never going to happen. And that's probably one of the pitfalls of our system here, our democratic system. While many things about it are wonderful, with the two parties pitted against each other and how that plays out over time, God knows where we're going to be in 20 years. And so in China, it's a little bit easier to do central planning that way because Xi Jinping is ruling with an iron fist, and you know, he kind of lays out the whole that he plans not to give up power either. And so I just think that's what Trump is trying to do. I still say it's ambitious in 3 years to bite so much off. I commend him for wanting to make all these moves that would strengthen the United States, but I also worry about, Lydia, to that point, who will sort of carry the torch as we move forward. We've talked about the perils within the GOP party, the progressives and the Democrats. You know what their problems are. But people in this country need to get a little bit more on the same page about these priorities. I think that's what he's worried about.
I think he tries to put structural things in place so that whoever's next can't ignore it.
Right.
Yes. Like your next president, I'm going to say Newsom, he would never do this because, first of all, I don't think he's smart enough. But second of all, it's not in his interest. And NATO, like, God bless NATO, but those guys weren't even spending. What did Trump get them to? From like 1% of their GDP to like 3%? They should be at 5%. Mike, all I'm saying is, whatever NATO is now, Trump made NATO that. And if China or Russia attacks somewhere up in the territory you're talking about, it ain't going to be the NATO guys who show up first. It's going to be the U.S. of A. And it'd be nice if we had exactly what we needed on Greenland when they show up.
NATO is a direct slap in the face to every American. All right? They have free health care for life. They have government-funded pensions. We have $40 trillion in debt. We don't have free health care. We don't have pensions for life. Okay? And a lot of it, and like their economies and their countries exist on the back of our military, on us spending $1 trillion a year on our military. So NATO can do what we tell them or cease to exist. Like it's not, and like it may sound braggadocious to say something like that, but it's the reality. NATO is a joke. There are some countries that punch above their weight in this bloc, but it's not like you have Germans and a lot of these other countries practicing with wooden weapons because they don't have the money for ammunition. Like this is, it's laughable, and somehow it's a crime that Trump says this out loud, right? And so again, this makes sense for Denmark. This will be a meaningful amount of revenue. If you can get up to $20 billion of annual revenue with the 50-50 split, which is, and they tried this in the first Trump administration. They tried to strike a deal with Greenland and Denmark, and it didn't quite get there. I think they have to get it over the line now because, like, look, Trump is a deal maker. But, you know, their government brings in $200 billion a year, another $10 billion to that government. That matters.
You're talking about
That's
$20 billion a year in revenue to Greenland?
10.
That would make everybody in that island a millionaire multi-times over. There's like 56,000 people on that island.
Well, there's rumors of if you pay a couple million to buy them out, like the people are thrilled because they're all millionaires.
You make them multi-millionaire.
Yeah, give me a U.S. passport too.
That's the goal.
So this works for everybody. So the pushback leads me to believe that these European leaders that are pushing it back are on the take.
Okay, love the commentary. We're going to leave it there. I want your thoughts.